to speak with you?
Yes, Your Honor.
What's your position at this time?
Yes, at this time, Your Honor, on behalf of Mr. McKee, I will assert his right to counsel. I will assert his right to remain silent. And Mr. McKee believes that the most expeditious manner in which he may defend himself against the charges pending in Ohio and to plead not guilty would be to waive his right to an extradition hearing and to have a governor's warrant and to agree to his immediate transportation to Ohio.
Understood, thank you. We will set this matter then for 2 o'clock on Monday for status on the transfer.
Thank you.
Anything else we can do today?
Not from this one.
Thank you, Kirk. Thanks, everyone.
If you believe every victim deserves to be remembered and every truth deserves to be told, subscribe to The Crime Narrator. These stories live on because you're here to hear them.
Long after the marriage was over, Michael McKee would say he never left Monique Tepe's life. Not emotionally. Not entirely. At the time, it sounded like the kind of statement people make when they want to be remembered as present rather than absent, devoted rather than discarded. It did not raise alarms. It did not feel dangerous. It felt unresolved. Monique's life after divorce was not chaotic. It was deliberate. She rebuilt through routine, work, plans, conversations about the future that were spoken carefully, as if optimism itself required caution. She was not erasing the past. She was managing it, believing that history could exist without control, that familiarity did not automatically mean threat. When Spencer Tepe entered her life, he stepped into that balance quietly. He was not loud. He was not competing with what came before. Friends described him as steady, attentive, the kind of person who listens more than he speaks. He did not try to dominate her story. He joined it. Together, they moved forward in small, ordinary ways, shared spaces, shared routines, shared silences that felt earned rather than imposed. From the outside, it looked unremarkable, normal, two people building something gentle and unassuming. And yet Michael was still there. Not physically present in photographs, not visible in public moments, but present in the way that only someone with history can be, through knowledge, through memory, through access that doesn't require keys. He knew how Monique lived. He knew her rhythms. He knew the shape of her life before Spencer ever did. There were no public confrontations, no dramatic warnings, no recorded threats, nothing that would later fit neatly into a timeline labeled escalation. Instead, there was emotional proximity, the kind that survives distance, messages that felt casual, conversations that blurred boundaries, an insistence, spoken and unspoken, that connection still existed. This is how danger sometimes forms, not through rage, but through entitlement disguised as care. Monique believed in managing that closeness. She believed maturity meant coexistence, that the past could remain present without being powerful. It is a belief many people share, and most of the time it is harmless. Spencer, too, seemed to accept this balance. There is no evidence he challenged it, no sign he tried to sever what he did not fully own. He lived alongside history rather than attempting to erase it. But unresolved attachment does not dissolve quietly. It waits, it watches, it redefines itself as permanence. Michael's statement that he never left her life takes on a different weight when you consider how little effort it takes to remain emotionally embedded in someone you once shared everything with. It does not require obsession. It does not require surveillance. It only requires the belief that access still exists. As listeners, it's important to pause here. Stories like this are not about instant conclusions. They are about patterns, about what feels ordinary until hindsight changes the shape of memory. If you're drawn to cases that unfold through silence rather than spectacle, take a moment to stay with this channel, to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts. These stories matter because they resist easy answers. Nothing about Monique and Spencer's life suggested chaos. Their days were predictable. Their space was familiar. There were no signs of intrusion, no indications that someone did not belong there. And that detail matters. Because when everything appears undisturbed, investigators are trained to ask a different kind of question. Not who forced their way in, but who didn't need to. The idea that danger must announce itself is comforting. It suggests warning signs, red flags, moments we can point to and say, that was it. But many crimes do not arrive loudly. They arrive through familiarity, through doors that open without resistance, through people who are already known. Michael's presence in Monique's life was never framed as a threat. It was framed as continuity, as history refusing to disappear. And history, when left unresolved, has a way of reshaping the present without asking permission. When the deaths eventually occur, the shock is not amplified by disorder. There is no scene of destruction, no evidence of struggle that tells a clear story. Instead, there is stillness, order, silence. And silence in cases like this is never empty. It holds questions. It holds access. It holds the unsettling possibility that whoever entered that space did not feel like an outsider at all. The discovery did not arrive with chaos. It arrived with stillness. Investigators are trained to recognize when a scene speaks too softly. In the space where Spencer and Monique were found, there was no obvious sign of intrusion, no shattered entry point, no scattered belongings, nothing that suggested panic or interruption. The environment appeared familiar, almost preserved, as though whatever happened there did not disrupt the space. It belonged within it. That absence immediately narrowed the possibilities. When a door is not forced, it is often opened. When there is no struggle, it suggests trust, familiarity, or resignation. These are not conclusions, they are starting points. And in this case, they directed attention not outward but inward toward the lives already connected to that home. Friends and family began replaying conversations, re-examining details that once seemed harmless. Small moments resurfaced, comments made in passing, interactions that now felt heavier than they had before. This is the cruel arithmetic of hindsight. Meaning accumulates only after loss. Spencer's presence complicates the narrative. He was not a continuation of the past. He represented something else, a future, a life that was actively moving forward. If Monique had been the sole target, his presence raises questions that refuse easy answers. Why was he there? Why did he not survive? Was he incidental or essential to what unfolded? Investigators consider this carefully. Crimes rooted in personal history often reveal their intent through selection. Who is included? Who is excluded? Who cannot remain if control is to be maintained? Michael McKee re-enters the frame here not as an accusation but as a constant. His emotional presence in Monique's life did not end with divorce. He had history, familiarity, knowledge of routines that outsiders simply do not possess. These are facts, not indictments, but they matter. Control does not always express itself through violence. Sometimes it manifests through proximity, through an inability to relinquish relevance, through the quiet conviction that access still exists. Michael's interactions with Monique after the separation were not publicly volatile. There were no explosive messages that demanded immediate concern. Instead, there was continuity, a line that never fully disconnected. To some, this looked like care. To others, it felt like unfinished business. Spencer, by contrast, represented resolution. He existed in the present. He shared daily life. His role was visible, tangible, And in some narratives, that alone can be destabilizing, not because of who he was, but because of what he symbolized. Law enforcement examines timelines next, where people were, when they last communicated, what patterns shifted. This process is slow and unsatisfying for those who want answers quickly. It is built on elimination, not assumption. There is no public record of a confession, no definitive forensic link released that closes the circle neatly. The case exists in a space where suspicion breathes, but certainty does not settle. This is where many true crime stories falter, where speculation overtakes restraint. But restraint matters, because implication without proof can distort truth just as easily as denial. What remains undeniable is that the deaths were not random. They did not emerge from chaos or chance. Someone knew this space. Someone understood these lives well enough to move within them without resistance. As listeners, it's tempting to rush toward judgment, to grasp for clarity in the discomfort of ambiguity. But staying with uncertainty is part of the work. If you find yourself drawn into that process, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share this story. Not to amplify speculation, but to keep attention on the questions that still matter. Michael's own words linger here, heavier now than when they were first spoken. He said he never left her life. Whether that was a statement of devotion, denial, or something else entirely is not for narration to decide. But language reveals belief, and belief shapes behavior. Investigators know that crimes of control rarely announce themselves in advance. They are quiet, calculated, often invisible until they are complete. Yet knowledge of this pattern does not replace evidence. It only frames the questions more sharply. Why these two lives? Why this moment? Why this stillness? The answers do not arrive yet. They hover just beyond reach, suspended between what is known and what is suspected. And in that space, the story continues to unravel not toward certainty, but toward deeper unease. The hardest part of this story is not what can be proven. It is what refuses to settle. When a relationship ends, society assumes a clean break. That time creates distance. That distance creates release. But emotional attachment does not always obey structure. Some connections do not fade. They reframe themselves as permanence, as relevance, as entitlement that no longer needs permission. Michael McKee's words return here, not as evidence but as echo. He said he never left Monique's life. At first that statement sounded sentimental. Now it sounds immovable. There is a difference between presence and possession, between care and control, and the line separating them is often invisible until it is crossed. Investigators understand this, but they are bound by proof, not interpretation. They can document timelines, examine communication, and reconstruct movements, but they cannot prosecute intent without evidence. And so the case remains suspended. Monique's belief was that the past could be managed without being feared. That coexistence was possible. That maturity meant allowing history to exist without allowing it to dominate. Many people live this way. Most are never harmed by it. Spencer entered her life without force, without rivalry. He did not attempt to rewrite her story, only to share the present chapter. His role was not aggressive or possessive. It was steady. And sometimes, steadiness itself becomes a contrast that unsettles unresolved attachment. If this was a crime rooted in control, then it was not born in anger. It was born in certainty. The certainty that access still existed, that emotional proximity justified presence, that the future unfolding without permission could be interrupted. But certainty is not proof.
Awaits extradition in an Illinois jail. Columbus police say the investigation into Spencer and Monique Tepe's murders is ongoing as they continue to collect evidence.
We can't speak to all the specific details related to this case, so we don't want to jeopardize the ultimate goal of conviction. But what we can say, this was a targeted attack.
Columbus police confirming this video of a person of interest walking towards the Tepe's property is Monique's ex-husband, Dr. Michael McKee, now charged with their murders. Columbus police say video of McKee's car was seen in the area before the time of the murders, leaving shortly after. 8 years after their divorce, McKee's motive remains unclear.
Can you tell us if McKee and Mrs. Tepe had any contact leading up to this incident, months, weeks?
Any stalking concerns there?
Again, what we can share with you, we are sharing with you. There are some things that we can't share for investigative purposes.
Police tell us there were no complaints or reports filed against McKee prior to the attack. No indications of him disturbing the Tepes. But how did McKee access their home?
Unfortunately, we're not able to talk about that at this moment.
Columbus Mayor Andrew Ginther said evidence at 9:42 Saturday morning, federal ATF agents took McKee into custody at a Chick-fil-A near a Rockford area hospital where he was employed as a vascular surgeon. Authorities also confirm multiple guns were taken from the home, with the murder weapon also located. As attention only continues to grow on the case.
The justice system does not move on what feels likely. It moves on what can be shown. And in this case, the silence left behind is louder than any conclusion drawn too quickly. There is no public confession that explains motive. No definitive forensic revelation that resolves doubt. No single moment that answers every question. What remains are patterns, and patterns are persuasive but not decisive. This is where true crime becomes uncomfortable, because the absence of resolution challenges the instinct to assign meaning, to label guilt, to find closure where none may exist. Michael McKee may be innocent of the act itself. That possibility must remain. Emotional proximity does not equal criminal responsibility. History does not automatically translate into violence. And suspicion, without evidence, is not truth. But neither is silence benign. Silence can be a shelter for avoidance. It can be a mask for entitlement. It can be the space where control hides when it does not need to shout. Monique and Spencer are often reduced to the mystery surrounding their deaths, but they were more than a question mark. They were a life in motion, a future being assembled quietly without spectacle. They mattered long before they became the center of speculation. As listeners, we carry responsibility too, to stay curious without becoming careless, to discuss without declaring, to remember that unresolved cases are not puzzles, they are lives interrupted. If this story stayed with you, take a moment to reflect with others who value restraint over rumor. Subscribe, share, and leave your thoughts, not as verdicts but as questions. Awareness does not require accusation. Some crimes announce themselves through violence. Others announce themselves through absence. Some people do not explode when they lose control. They withdraw. They wait. They remain. And some stories do not end with answers, only with the quiet understanding that not everything dangerous arrives loudly, and not everyone who says they never left truly means it harmlessly. Spencer Tepe and Monique Tepe deserve to be remembered not for the uncertainty surrounding their deaths, but for the lives they were living before silence overtook them. And that silence, unresolved, unsettling, and heavy, is where this story must rest.